certain institutions, no matter what they say, they really don't care about you.
No.
And it's more about them. No matter what they say, or, you're important to us. It's all about protecting the establishment.
Yes.
Always know, no matter who you work for, that you need to protect yourself first and foremost.
Yeah.
Because
what you do not need HR. What you need is a union.
Perhaps I could use this as an excuse to go to those far-off planets with little polka-dotted people if necessary, and be able to talk about love, war, nature, God, sex, all those things that go to make up the excitement of the human condition.
I'm Captain James Kirk. Mr. Spock.
Your move, Captain. Jim Kirk of the Enterprise.
What's going on? I'm James Kirk. These people are my friends and my shipmate. Leave my crew alone.
Out of the question.
How about that? James Kirk.
It fits like a glove, Captain.
Oh, the bonehead ideas. Gentlemen, I'm Captain James Kirk. Get out of my chair. Get out of it now.
My greetings and felicitations, Captain. So good of you and your officers to, drop in. Absolutely smashing.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Humanist Trek. It's a Star Trek podcast about the humanism in Star Trek. I'm Sarah Ray.
And I'm Allie Ashmead.
What were we going to talk about? I went to Retromania last weekend.
You did?
Yeah, I did. It was great. Are we letting people behind the curtain?
I don't know. Are we?
I don't know. We record all of this stuff way ahead of time, so I'm sure it was fun. And I don't know. I'm going to try not to spend very much money. Yeah. Next week, maybe I'll tell you if there's anything exciting to actually talk about. Maybe I'll tell you that on the next episode. Any
photo to make sure?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah, I'm going to check it. I'm sure I did. And I have so many great things to say about it next week. So I guess I'll take a moment in the opening here to just remind everybody that we are really trying to grow the audience this year. That's the big goal. And so if you could share the episode out with some people might enjoy it, that would be a super big help. The other thing that we're going to start doing, and we have several of these on the calendar already, we're going to start going to some conventions and NerdCon and
nerd things.
Yeah,
just
nerdy things. We're going to set up. So like some of them, like Retromania, was one that when I started through the list of like, okay, what cons could we go to? That one came up and I was like, oh, I don't know. Cause some of these people's websites are not great. And so it doesn't really convey a lot about what you can expect at this particular event. And so Retromania is one that looked like if you went to a convention and the only thing there was the sales floor, right? No guests, no speakers, no whatever. That's kind of what it looked like to me. So
just a big vendor area?
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to go check it out and see if it's the kind of thing that we should table at in the future. Yeah. But you're going to be on the cruise at the end of February.
Time is ticking away. I can't believe it's like 30 days or something. And I'm just like, what? I'm still trying to get all my costumes together. I keep coming up with these really cool ideas and I'm like, oh, I should do this. And it's, and I'm so afraid I've kind of started to pack or at least put things aside so that I don't forget them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's exciting.
Well, as soon as you get back, Becca and I are going to QuadCon in Nebraska.
That's going to be cool.
So that's in Omaha, Nebraska. So we'll
never been to Nebraska. So have you been to Nebraska ever?
Oh yeah. So the last time we went home to visit the family for Christmas, we
drove through.
Yeah. I think, we took, because the last time we came through, you leave Illinois and you go through Missouri and then, what is it? Fucking Arkansas, Kansas, something.
Kansas, I think. I have to look at a map.
Me too. Yeah, see, so kids, if your teachers told you how important it was to learn all this shit in geography. My teacher also said, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket, so you need to learn how to do it the long way. And now I carry a calculator everywhere I go in my pocket. So, so normally to get home, it's like a straight shot, Illinois through Missouri, Kansas to Colorado. Mm-hmm. But this time we went kind of up into Nebraska, across through Iowa, and then in. So, yes, been to Nebraska recently, as a matter of fact.
What was there? Just what kind of sights did you see?
Nothing. Do you remember what it was like driving through Kansas to get here?
Yeah.
It's like that, only one state north.
I hate it.
It's the same fucking. It might as well just be North Kansas.
I bitched the entire time all the way through Kansas. So yeah.
So we've got that, and then in April, American Atheist Convention in Phoenix. May is the American Humanist Association conference here in Denver.
Yay.
And then we've got I haven't heard back from Fan Expo yet, but Fan Expo Denver is in June.
Oh, cool.
Last weekend in June, first weekend of July. So I applied, but a lot of these conventions, they take the applications and then they put them before a committee who decides who they're going to accept and who they're not. So
really, I didn't know that.
Interestingly,
so we're being judged.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. So anyway, there's some conventions that we're going to look at being out in, meeting people, and hopefully getting some more listeners. And so if you found us at one of those conventions and you're listening back through the back catalog, welcome.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, y'all.
Let's get into our episode today. It's Star Trek, the original series, Season 1, Episode 21, Court Martial.
Sir, contact with an object. It's moving toward us. No visual contact yet.
Deflectors, full intensity.
Mr. Sulu, yes, get anything on your scanners?
It's coming at light speed.
Collision course, visual contact.
Anything, over?
All wavelengths dominated by ionization effects, sir.
All engines full stop.
The Enterprise has just gone through an ion storm. Significant damage to the ship, one crew person dead, Lieutenant Commander Finney.
Oh my god, they've killed
Lieutenant Commander Finney.
you bastards!
I think this is probably the earliest I've ever used the "oh my god, he's dead" drop in one of our episodes.
Yeah, we never got to see the action. We didn't see any action.
Nope.
We just know he's dead, and they're headed to Starbase 11 for repairs. Now, this is something that they don't normally do or didn't talk about in previous episodes. When someone dies, you've got to give a report.
Mm-hmm.
But so in this case, a full report was provided to the Starbase 11 command, who is Commodore Stone. So Commodore Stone is given priority to the repairs on the Enterprise, and he's basically bumped the USS Intrepid.
Everybody
bumped him off the schedule.
There's a lot of fun prop work in this scene. So right away, there's a status board on the wall behind them that shows the registry numbers of all the different ships that are being worked on. And so there's 10 ships in all. And it's like a fun little bar chart that shows the percentage of completeness of the repair.
A progress bar. That's
yep.
Cool.
And Kirk's sitting at a table flipping through some papers. Again, we're still using paper in 2265?
I guess. Makes no sense.
Anyway, he's filling out a witness statement, and StarTAC's up to Uhura to find out where Spock is because the Commodore needs some computer data to confirm what Kirk's written out. So they're going to compare what the computer recorded to Kirk's witness statement.
Right.
And as Kirk is explaining what happened to the Commodore, Spock beams in with an orange floppy disk, and he's got a very concerned look on his face. But before he can tell Kirk about his concern, Stone snatches up the floppy disk and pops it into his computer.
Stone says it's a pity to lose a man like Commander Finney, and Kirk said, he waited until the last possible moment.
So the door opens and in comes Jamie in what has to be the worst costume this show has ever put together.
for a young child girl. Yeah.
It's kind of like a blue sailor looking shirt thing, but it's got full tulle sleeves and a blue glittery cheerleader looking skirt with white hose. It was the worst costume I've ever seen in this show.
And honestly, her acting was a bit much to me. She's like, there you are. I just wanted to get a look at the man who killed my father. Also, she got up into Kirk's face, real close and all up in his grill. So
this is Finney's daughter, and she's rip shit about her dad getting killed, and she blames Kirk. She's she roars into the room on all thrusters and just lays into him. And she makes the case that Kirk, despite his protestations, had always hated Finney and murdered him and she just loses it crying to the point that Stone has to ask Spock to escort her out of the room. And I thought to myself, Spock is either the perfect person to handle crying in the workplace or the absolute worst. So let me tell you a story. When Becca and I worked at Disney together in Fantasyland, we had a young, like, international college program cast member. So Disney brings in kids that can basically come and work a summer for college credit, essentially. So there's a domestic program and the international program. So this international college program cast member starts crying in a backstage hallway, and I don't even remember why. Like, she was homesick or didn't feel like she was fitting in and making friends or something. I don't know. Becca could probably tell you. But anyway, we all kind of looked around at each other like, fuck, I'm not good at this.
Like, who wants to handle this? Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody.
And luckily, there was this sweet motherly woman that worked with us, and she just jumped right in and handled it because we were all like, I don't know what to do with crying in the workplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, Spock would not have had that reaction because he's not going to get uncomfortable with anything. So he's probably the perfect person to handle stuff like that.
What I wondered was, is Spock
not.
too not emotional? Right? Do you want someone who can empathize and like connect with the person who's upset and why they're upset? Or do you want Spock who has no emotion and he's just going to be like, suck it up, Buttercup?
Get the fuck out of here. Let me just remove you. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So as soon as they're alone, Spock escorts her out. Stone asks Kirk if he's sure that he jettisoned the pod after the red alert. And Kirk's like, yeah, you read my witness statement, but Stone says the computer record shows that the pod was jettisoned before the red alert was called. And that's enough. That's enough to suspect Kirk of perjury. And he's confined to the base. That felt like a quick jump to me.
Yeah.
Like from investigation to you just perjured yourself.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, he was also affected by the girl Jamie's behavior, like someone accusing someone of murder. And then he's like, oh, maybe I should take a second look at this.
Yeah, that's true.
And something doesn't add up. So
now we have our setup. An inquiry will review all of this and determine if a court-martial is in order. We open Act 1 in what looks like a bar or restaurant, and we get a captain's log voiceover. Kirk and McCoy sidle up to the bar, and Kirk recognizes one of the guys at the bar, Timothy, who he says he hasn't seen since the Vulcanian expedition. So here we go, still Vulcanian and not Vulcan.
Mm-hmm.
But Timothy isn't the only familiar face. Kirk's like, well, fuck me silly. We've got quite the class reunion happening here. And he kind of goes around the room and starts naming names.
They don't seem very enthusiastic to see him. But they're like downright frosty to him.
It's almost like, so I don't go to class reunions on purpose. I go home.
I've been to 2 of them.
I go home for weddings and funerals and occasionally to surprise my mother and father on Christmas. But that's it. But I feel like there's got to be that one person, right, who does this. We've got the guy comes in and thinks he's all popular and everybody is kind of like, oh, fuck, that guy came.
Honestly, so I went to my 20th.
Okay.
And then in my 25th. And no matter how they were in high school, you're still kind of like glad to see them when they, just because you're curious as hell. Like, how did you turn out? Because you were such a dick in high school. And even when they're still a dick, I don't know. I wasn't frosty to anyone. And I don't think anyone was. Now we might after the party talk shit about everybody. But during the party, everyone's really friendly. And it's just nice because we were all like, you're part of that person's childhood and that person's development in good or bad.
Right. That's fair.
Yeah.
So these guys all seem real put off by Kirk, and it's made clear pretty quickly that word has gotten around fast, and they're not on Team Kirk when it comes to the death of Ben Finney.
Yeah. Bones
tries to talk Kirk down a couple of times, but Kirk keeps pushing back, like, no, go on, say it with your whole mouth.
But Timothy's like, well, I think the point's been made. Finney was a friend of theirs, and so McCoy's like, Jim, let's just go. But no, Kirk is like stubborn.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm gonna stay here. And
finally he does have enough and decides to leave, and on his way out he bumps into another officer and almost bumps into this episode's sex appeal, Ariel Shaw, And McCoy's right on her like Kirk at an Orion orgy.
It was very cringy.
Yeah. He's like, that was indeed Captain James Kirk, but she had already recognized Kirk. And they chat a little bit here about McCoy being one of the few friends Kirk seems to have at the moment with everything going on. And it turns out Shaw is an old friend of Kirk's because of course she is.
I love this line that Kirk says. McCoy says. He says, all of my friends look like old doctors, but all of Kirk's friends look like you.
Uh-huh.
He invites her for a drink.
Meanwhile, Stone is beginning the inquiry with Kirk. He's charged with perjury and culpable negligence. First, he asks about the relationship that Kirk had with Finney, which Kirk claims was a positive one.
Yeah.
Finney had been an instructor at the academy when Kirk was a midshipman. They developed a friendship. And Ben's daughter, Jamie, which is actually spelled Jame, was named after Kirk.
Named after him.
James.
Yeah. So it wasn't like this horrible, like we're finding out as everyone else is finding out about the history.
That friendship kind of crashed later.
Yeah.
When they were assigned to a starship together. Because what had happened was Finney fucked up and Kirk found it and turned him in.
Yeah. So basically they were on the United Starship Republic and then Kirk was relieving him from watch one day. So Kirk found a circuit open to the atomic matter piles, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And it should have been closed. So he closed it, but you have to report shit like that because a few more minutes open and it would have blown up the ship. So he had to report it. But as a result, Finney got written up and sent to basically the bottom of the promotion list. And he blamed him for that. But like, Finney, you did something wrong and could have killed people. But why are you going to be mad at Kirk for doing, like, he would have done that no matter. I guess he was expecting, it's his friend. He's going to just not say anything.
Yeah, he'll close it and be like, hey, Ben, next time, remember to fucking close the
don't try to kill everyone.
Yeah. Then we move on to the actual incident. Kirk says that a weather scan detected an ion storm ahead. And is it weather if it's a space phenomenon?
Yeah, because you're not on a planet, so how is it weather?
Like, so isn't that just a sensor scan instead of a weather scan?
But then also, like, they never explained this whole process of when you get into an ion storm, what pod does someone have to get into?
Right.
Why do you need a person to get into a pod? Is it some pod that's like out on the outside of the ship?
I have no idea. No, they did not explain that well at all, or why it had to be jettisoned.
Yeah,
there were a lot of holes in this episode as far as that goes.
The science was not sound. Like,
right.
Make it make sense.
Well, like even the ion storm itself, is that a phenomenon that can happen in space, or is it like on a planet? Because I've heard them talk about ion storms on planets before.
Yeah.
So were we on a planet? No, we're in the ship. I'm so confused.
Go fucking around it. It's space.
Here we go again. 3 dimensions. Yeah. Anyway, Kirk sent Finney to the pod. Again, not clear what the pod was for or why they launched it. And
where it was. Yeah.
Yep. Stone interrupts to ask if that assignment had anything to do with their strained relationship. And Kirk's like, look, he was at the top of the duty roster. He pulled that assignment, period. Anyway, they entered this storm and it was pretty nasty. Kirk says he called for yellow alert. They started getting measurements from the storm, and then he called for red alert. And then he says that Finney knew he only had seconds.
And Kirk said he tried to give him more that time and more, but apparently wasn't enough.
Stone's like, cool, so why does the floppy disk from your computer show that you were still on yellow alert when you jettisoned the pod? Could the computer be wrong? And the answer to that question is really super not likely, but Spock is doing some checks to see if there are any issues with the Enterprise computers. Stone pauses the tape recorder then, and he's like, off the record, listen, Jim, I know what this job is like. You're making hundreds of life and death decisions. You've got to be exhausted. And what he's suggesting here is that he can write his report to show that if Kirk cooperates. And Kirk's like, what? You going to write that I had a physical breakdown, mental collapse? And And he argues that he would be admitting to causing this death when he knows he didn't. But Stone's like, look, just shut up and let me handle this.
Right, because he's like, no captain of a starship has ever stood trial before, and he didn't want Jim to be the first.
Really, though?
And
none? There have been none? I have a hard time believing that.
But they probably like sweep it under the rug, just like he's trying to do.
That's right. Yeah,
and
good call.
He wanted to just bury it right then and there, but Jim was like, I'm not going out like that. I'm gonna fight, because he didn't want it to seem like he was incompetent, because he didn't feel like he was. He doesn't panic. He doesn't do things out of malice. When you know what I mean. So that was his take anyway. And so, like, if you suspect that all this is true, then I should be punished, or I should be court-martialed. I should have an opportunity to defend myself. So it's clear that Stone actually does think he's a perjurer and that he's covering up something, but he would rather leave the matter there so that it wouldn't smear. So he's not only thinking about Kirk, but he's thinking about Starfleet's, reputation.
Yeah. That's a... Oof.
That's... It's disturbing, but it's a part of our life today.
It is.
If you work for a company, like you've seen... Like let's say you're a top exec in a company, and you, even if rumored to have done something, you may or may not have, but now the perception is you've done it. You can either try to fight it, or you can basically take the L, take your money, and like fucking retire. Because that happens all the time. They force these people to retire, but then they're living in kind of like exile, and people think they did something wrong, and they didn't necessarily do it, and they don't get a chance to stand up and say, I didn't do this. So I don't know. That's what I kind of equate it to, like somebody at the top possibly doing something wrong, but
yeah,
prove it. Can you prove you didn't? And some people just, like, instead of wanting to fight, they just take the money and go.
Yeah. Well, this whole situation, I think, is frustrating. Like, even as a viewer, like you take that frustration, because it's real relatable, I think, and real human to, like, I know I'm innocent, and but nobody's believing me. I think that's a situation that a lot of people connect with.
Right. And for someone to ask you not to defend yourself, it's like saying, it's like admitting you did it.
Yeah.
And that's
so
not a good feeling.
Stone's like, you're either going to take a ground assignment and let me handle this shit, or you'll have to go to court and get your ass handed to you by Starfleet Command. And here we go. Finally, we have Starfleet Command.
Nice.
It's been a number of things prior to this. And Kirk's like, you're not going to just sweep this and me under the rug. I demand this court martial, and I want it right now. Back in the bar, Kirk finds his old flame. Did he not see her when he stormed out of the bar earlier? Because it sure looked like she came. He should have seen her.
He ran into her, but he wasn't paying attention, I guess. But yeah, he almost knocked her over, but he didn't realize it was her, I guess.
Anyway, he's like, McCoy said you were here. I should have felt it in the air like static electricity. And she's all, flattery will get you everywhere.
Oh my.
Now, this is a phrase that I have used many a time. Flattery will get you everywhere, especially back in my slutty years. And I never really connected, like, where I picked that up from. Maybe it was Star Trek.
I don't know.
Maybe that's where I got that line.
A saying, or it could have been a saying that just people said back in the TV.
Kirk's like, my, how long has it been? And Ariel's like, oh, I'm not counting, but yeah.
4 years, 7 months, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, dang. Would you count?
Listen, I've never, that's not true. When I was a teenager, I was counting days, but,
oh my goodness.
But like, Becca does this shit. She will be like, oh, it's our anniversary. And I was like, nope, we got married October 4th. This is not our anniversary. And she'll be like, oh no, it's the anniversary of the first time this. And I'm like, what the fuck? How do you remember that shit? I have trouble remembering how old I am. Like, Jesus Christ. So it turns out Ariel is a lawyer in the judge advocate's office. And this made me think of an episode of The Next Generation.
Really?
It is a classic Lawyer Picard episode called The Measure of a Man. And this is the episode.
That sounds familiar.
This is the episode where Bruce Maddox, big
Data.
tie-in with New Trek, right? But Maddox shows up to collect data as property of the Federation and perform experiments on him. And they have this trial to determine Data's personhood. So that was a great episode, and I can't wait till we get there. But
me too. I love that. I love that episode.
Yeah,
but there's always got to be
in that
a trial.
episode, Picard takes up the role as Data's lawyer, and he has to argue in front of the JAG, which is one of his old flames, Captain Philippa Louvois.
Oh, that's right. And actually, she was the judge.
Yes, right.
And then Riker was the prosecution.
So there's a lot of connections, even with that. That I thought was cool. But this scene is like classic fucking dude bro. Kirk's trying to talk Ariel out of her dress, and the whole time she's like, take a cold shower, buddy. This trial could ruin you. Like, why aren't you thinking about that? Yeah.
Right. She's like, why are you taking this so lightly? And he's like, well, it's the confidence of an innocent man. But no, it's his dick talking.
Oh, for sure.
It's really his dick.
She's like, let me give you some advice. The prosecution is going to play this as Kirk versus the computer, and your attorney can't argue against that. Like, there's no winning that argument, which is why she says he's got to be a good one, a good attorney. And Kirk's like, you? But Ariel says she's busy, and it was at that point that I said out loud, she's the prosecuting attorney. And Becca went, like, holy shit. Yeah, she didn't see it coming at all.
Yeah. And she goes on to say, well, the prosecution is going to slap him down hard for the good of the service. His attorney won't have a chance. And she can't be his attorney. So she says she can recommend someone named Samuel T. Cogley. But he wants to know, like, how come you know so much about this case? And surely you can. And he says you could still take my case. You could defend two people at one time if you're busy.
She recommends Cogley, and then she's like, well, I gotta go. Bye. Yep. And Kirk's like, wait, hold up. How do you know so much about what the prosecution's gonna do? Now, I think it would have made better TV if he had just shown up in the courtroom and she was there in position.
And she shouldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
But she had to say, well, because I am going to be the one prosecuting you.
Yep. And she says, and I have to do my best. Like, I can't just let you have this.
And I'm right thinking, he better hope he never fucked her over, because if he did, he gonna get got.
Mm-hmm. The next scene, Kirk arrives back in his quarters to find Cogley inside with books all over the room. And Kirk makes the argument I've been using since this show fucking started. Books? Really? We have computers. They take up less space. They don't cost nearly as many trees.
But motherfucker's still using paper, so shut up, Kirk. Yep. Shut up.
But Cogley's like, look here, young man. When I was your age, we had to walk to Starfleet Academy in 12 inches of snow, barefoot, uphill both ways.
All right.
Computers, humbug.
Yeah, he's totally waxing poetic about books, and he's like, this is where the real law is, and talks about, like, Moses and some other historical figures that, where the basis of law started.
Yeah, he says that the computer can't imbue the intent of the lawmakers. So, somehow that it's printed on a paper instead of shown on a screen changes the way it reads, I guess. I don't know. But he's like, and you got to have the books for that. Kirk has a great line here. He's like, you have to either be an obsessive crackpot who's escaped from his keeper or Samuel T. Cogley, attorney at law. Jump to the courtroom, and the Commodore calls the session to order. We get the first look at this panel of judges, and while there is thankfully some racial diversity among them, they are old men, all of them, every single one, and that disappointed me a little bit.
Yeah, and hey, at least there you had a West Indian person. Commodore Stone was black.
Yep.
Let's see, who else was? I forget the other two. I think were they both white?
I think so.
But
yeah.
There were two starship captains and the Space Command representative along with Stone on the panel.
Space Command Representative Lindstrom Starship Captain Krasnovsky and Chandra.
Yeah.
Right.
So Chandra was the Indian guy. Chernosky was just, I guess, regular old white guy. Lindstrom was regular old white guy.
Yeah. So there's they did well with the racial diversity. They just needed some women up in there.
But they do have at least a female lawyer. So
Kirk is given the opportunity to request alternates if he feels that any of them might bring prejudice to the case. And he's asked to consent to Stone presiding over the case and his ex-girlfriend, or whatever she is to him now, serving as prosecutor. And
was it Lieutenant Girlfriend?
Lieutenant Girlfriend. And he consents to all of that. While the computer reads out the charges and the basics of the incident, the camera kind of cuts around the room. Spock and McCoy are there, attending with a red shirt crew woman whom I don't think we've met before.
Nope, and we never get her name.
And Finney's daughter is there too.
And then there's an empty seat. Did you notice that? And I wondered if there was a reason for having that.
They put them
there.
Separated. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that's
what it was.
Kirk pleads not guilty, and they cut around the room some more. Lieutenant Girlfriend calls Spock to the stand. He hands off a floppy disk, which apparently contains his service record, I think is how that works.
Yeah. All his service record credentials. And
wouldn't that data be in the Starbase computer systems?
Yeah, like why would I want to carry my resume around?
Exactly.
Like, you could lose that.
Right. I uploaded the PDF, damn it. You don't need a paper copy.
Right.
And as he sits down, his hand lights up this thing on the armrest that I guess they use that to compare his ID to the person he claims to be. Like a biometric scan maybe or something.
Or maybe it's like the Bible.
Because they weren't
the Bible. I don't know. No, I'm joking. I'm pretty sure that wasn't it.
Computer Majel reads off Spock's service number, current assignment, and a healthy list of accomplishments, including Vulcanian Science Legion of Honor. Again, Vulcanian. Lieutenant Girlfriend asks Spock if, as the first officer, if he knows a lot about computers. And he's like, I know all about them. And she's like, great, because my laptop has a virus and I can't fucking figure out how to get back into Windows, and I refuse to take it to those Geek Squad guys.
And I will not pay for McAfee.
Yes. She acknowledges that computers can malfunction and asks Spock if it's possible that that's what happened with the Enterprise computers. But he dismisses this idea based on his own, as they call it, mechanical survey of the Enterprise computer.
But he says the computer is still wrong.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It didn't malfunction, but it's still wrong. He said it was impossible for Kirk to press the jettison button before the red alert. And when she asks him why, he's like, it's just not in his nature to do something like that. And so she asked him, did you see him? You know, where were you on the bridge? And he's like, well, I was busy doing a thing, so I didn't specifically see him do it. But I know that that's just not in Kirk's nature to panic or to do anything out of malice. And she's kind of starts getting a little bitchy here, and she's like instructing him not to speculate.
Yeah. But Spock's like, I'm half Vulcanian. We don't speculate. I'm speaking from logic. And there is some really great dialogue here, I think, where Spock basically answers the if a tree falls in a forest thought exercise, because he's like, if I drop a hammer on a planet with a positive gravity, I do not need to see it fall to know that it has in fact fallen.
Yep. And I love that he pulls out the Vulcan card. And then Lieutenant Girlfriend, she's done with him. And then Kirk's lawyer is, when asked if he'd like to cross-examine, he's like, nope. So Spock steps down. And that's when they call the personnel officer. She's an Asian woman, female officer, which I was like, that's awesome to see.
Hell yeah.
Sadly, she didn't have a name. So she was just a personnel officer.
You see red shirt.
Yep. And she's an ensign. She's basically HR, HR for the ship. So she brings up her floppy disk and she sits in the glowy chair thingy and puts her hand on the thing, and the computer reads out her credentials. And then Lieutenant Girlfriend, the prosecution, she's asking, wouldn't you be familiar with all of the service records of everybody on board? And she's like, yes, ma'am. And then she brings up Finney's service record and his disciplinary action that happened. And she's just basically asked to confirm. And she's like, yes, ma'am.
I did like, there's a shot here where they're talking about his record And there's a shot of Kirk in the foreground lower right corner, right? And then in the background is Jamie. And the camera pushes past Kirk into a close-up on Jamie. And I thought that was a really great shot choice.
So the only point of the personnel officer being on the stand is basically to establish the motive. Basically, Finney had a ding in his service record. It was caused because Kirk reported him, and that was pretty much all that was asked of her. And then Kirk's lawyer is like, nope, don't need to cross-examine this one either. So
when this UC records officer leaves the stand, she like visibly shakes her head while walking past Kirk and Cogley, like as if to say, I'm sorry or something.
I'm sorry. Yeah, she did mouth, I'm sorry. And, you know,
McCoy
she didn't really do anything wrong.
Right. Yeah, she just read out the facts. McCoy takes the stand next, and Lieutenant Girlfriend asks if he's on the record as an expert in psychology. And I thought, wait, no, he's not.
I thought he's the last person who would ever be it's considered an expert in psychology, but apparently, specifically space psychology, he is an expert.
Do you remember? Because I feel like in previous episodes, specifically the one with the LSD eyes, I felt like they brought in an expert in psychology.
Yes, so that was the whole point.
So he's not. Yeah,
he's the worst person to analyze anyone's brain. So I was like, I think they got the wrong guy.
She narrows it down to patterns that emerge during long voyages in deep space as something that he's knowledgeable about. And she asks him if it's possible that Finney blamed Kirk for the incident with the open circuit. He could have blamed Kirk for being passed over for promotion, never receiving a command of his own. And McCoy's like, well, sure, that's possible. Okay, then, she asks, is it normal for a person to return affection for hatred? To which McCoy says no. And she's trying to argue that, like, because Finney possibly hated Kirk, Kirk would inevitably, even if involuntarily, come to hate him back.
Now, I'm not a psychologist.
No.
Is that really true, though? Like, if somebody says they hate you for whatever reason, do you automatically hate them back? I don't
think so. No.
I may not want to be around that person, and I'm not going to, like, try to change their mind. If you hate me, fine. I'm going to live my life. But I'm not going to just hate them and try to kill them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so weird. She really pushes McCoy to agree that this is possible. And even though McCoy is like, but not Kirk. But not Kirk. He's not like that. Again, Cogley refuses to cross-examine. And Stone's like, Cogley, are you even paying attention over there? And he's great here. He says,
he's like,
I've just been waiting for all this preliminary crap to be done. Let's get Kirk on the stand already.
Oh, and then, of course, Kirk hands his little floppy disk over.
And Computer Majel starts reading off his service record.
And it just
keeps going
so long.
and going and going.
The Lieutenant Girlfriend is like, if it pleases the court, she jumps up.
She's like, Alexa, skip this song.
Right. But Sam is like, well, he wouldn't want to slow the wheels of progress, but on the other hand, he wouldn't want those wheels to run over his client. So he proceeds to have all of the credentials read.
I got Measure of a Man vibes here too, because I think the same thing happened when they started reading out Data's service record.
Yeah.
And Maddox was like, oh, we don't need to hear all of this. And Picard's like, no, I think we should hear his record because that speaks to his personhood.
Yep.
Anyway, this was a weird choice because Cogley lets Computer Majel keep reading for just a few more commendations, and then he stops her short and is like, well, okay, now that should be enough. Like, what? Just play the whole damn list.
Right.
Cogley asks Kirk if, despite the computer's records, was there a red alert before you jettison the pod, and asks Kirk to tell the story. And he kind of starts by saying, like, that he can't account for the computer error. We were in an ion storm, full stop. Couldn't that fuck up the computer? Couldn't an ion storm affect the computer?
Yeah.
So that's a possibility that never got raised in the whole episode. But Kirk takes responsibility for his actions, at least as far as being in command and making those command decisions, but he rejects the claim of malice or panic. And he argues that the court has heard a portion of his record, right? This isn't my first rodeo. I've been in situations like this before.
This was routine. Yeah.
Yeah. Cogley asks if he were put in that same situation again, would he do the same thing? And Kirk's like, absolutely, without hesitation. I did all the things that were required of me in the right order at the right time. And all of that was required to save. And he says, there's a foreshadowing here when he says, I did all of that was required to save my ship. And then he says, and nothing is more important than my ship. Lieutenant Girlfriend cross-examines, and she's like, well, I really hate to do this, but we have some video footage that y'all need to see.
She's got the police body cam footage.
Yeah. Now, I thought we established in the menagerie that starships don't record video like this. Because in the menagerie, we were in the courtroom watching Star Trek, the original series episode, The Cage, but it was being broadcast by the Telosians.
Well, apparently
they've installed some cameras, I guess.
They've upgraded. Yeah. And now we get to watch some more Trek TV.
Yeah.
So we get to actually see, we still don't see Finney because he's not on the bridge, but we actually get to see what happened.
So Uhura reports an ion storm ahead. Kirk says, we'll need someone in the pod to take readings. Again, no further explanation of how that works.
I wanted, where is this pod? Is it like on the outside of the ship, or is it
right? Do they send it ahead into the ion storm to take readings and send telemetry back? We're not none of that is ever explained.
No idea. Yeah.
And Spock mentions that Finney is top of duty roster. The ship hits the edge of the storm and they all do the jerk. They do the jerk a few times, but it's just like a small kind of bump. And Lieutenant Girlfriend stops and rewinds the tape and zooms in on the panel where Kirk is pressing the yellow alert button. Finney calls from the pod, and Kirk tells him to make it fast. I might have to go to red alert. Jerk a couple more times. The vibrations are getting stronger. Cut to close-up on the console again, and Kirk pushes the jettison pod button, not the red alert button.
Right, and the yellow alert is still blinking when he clicks the jettison pod.
I have issues here. What the fuck is there a jettison pod button doing on the armrest of the captain's chair?
Exactly.
Also, why the fuck are there yellow and red alert buttons on the armrest of the captain's chair? The captain is always calling for someone else on the bridge to do red alert.
Any of those things.
He says red alert and someone else turns it on.
So anyway, for the purposes of this episode,
that's it.
This was the only thing.
The entire chair console thing that was created solely for this episode.
Because
and I hate
chair
it.
Has nothing on those, normally nothing on the chair, on the arms.
I feel like there were some switches later in the series, or maybe I'm thinking movie Trek. And I know in TNG, Picard's does, but it's all that touchscreen stuff. It's not flip buttons and switches. Anyway, I think it was just stupid. Lieutenant Girlfriend has her Atticus Finch moment here. As you can clearly see, yellow alert. Kirk's pressing the eject button, so she says there was no emergency yet. We get some reaction shots, a lot of disbelief on faces around the room, especially Cogley and Kirk. And they're like, Kirk's like, but that's not how it happened.
That's not how it happened.
Kirk and Cogley are back in Kirk's quarters, and Cogley, despite seeming very anti-computer earlier, says, well, computers don't lie. And even Cogley now is questioning Kirk's innocence. He tells Kirk it's possible that he had a momentary lapse. He's like, we can still change our plea. And for one brief moment, even Kirk himself considers the possibility, but comes back to being convinced that he knows what he did. And I definitely connected with that feeling. Like usually for me, it's my terrible memory that causes that moment to happen. Like anytime I've ever been called into like the boss's office,
you're like, oh, fuck, what did I do? And you start thinking,
it's
like,
either
I must have done something.
Wait, what did I do? Or what was I supposed to do that I forgot about? Because that was more likely.
And then you suddenly don't trust your own memory.
No. Or did you do this thing? And I'll be like, yeah, I did the thing. And then I start to second, oh shit, did I take the garbage out? Or did I lock the front door? Or whatever. Like all of that was very relatable to me, that second guessing yourself.
100%.
Kirk gets a call on his StarTAC, and it's Spock, and he says he's run a full megalite survey, whatever that is, on the computer. And Kirk guesses correctly, still no issues with the computer. But he does have a fun line here that's just another one of those little examples of like character and relationship building. Kirk says, "Hey, Spock, it's not all that bad. You might even be able to beat your next captain at chess."
Yep.
And then Spock turns to camera. This is I think this is one of the GIFs that people use all the time. But Spock kind of turns to camera and raises his eyebrow.
Yep. And then he says,
chess.
As if something...
Light bulb just went off over his head.
Yeah. And always Spock for the win. Always. If anybody's going to figure it out, if somebody's in trouble...
It'll be Spock.
Spock is always going to win.
Jamie rings the doorbell at Kirk's quarters, and she comes in and she's like, "We got to call this whole thing off. Make Kirk take a ground assignment. I understand it wasn't his fault." And she goes on to apologize for coming at Kirk before when she was all emotional and being crazy. She says she didn't realize how close they had been until she read some of the letters that he had sent to her and her mom. And I thought, okay,
you didn't read them?
I thought, we'll bring these letters into the courtroom. This will be
this is your proof.
We're going to use this as evidence that they did have a better relationship. But that never happened either. There was no purpose for these letters other than to show Jamie that she might have misjudged Kirk. And then we get another touch on that justice versus vengeance theme that we've hit a few times in this first season already. Jamie says that ruining Kirk's career won't change what happened. Like, it won't bring back my dead dad. And Cogley finds this all very interesting. He's thinking, like, why would Jamie do a 180 like this?
Right. And I think he seems to have some kind of idea.
Yeah, he's got a suspicion now, too.
But technically, like, she wants him to take a ground assignment. That would ruin his career because that isn't what he wants to do.
Right.
So
I guess she sees the option like Stone did of your options are take a ground assignment or they're going to drum you out of the service completely.
Mm-hmm.
Cut to Spock playing tridimensional chess against the computer.
Tridimensional chess.
Yay. And McCoy bounds through the door and he's like, "Well, I just had to come down here and see it for myself. They're about to lop off the captain's proverbial head and you're fucking playing chess."
He's so quick to rush to judgment on Spock, even though time and time again, Spock has already proven that he's taking care of shit.
Time and time again, this exact thing has happened, right? And it's often McCoy Spock.
Why aren't you doing anything?
He's working out the problem, and then McCoy's like, "You're not doing anything," or whatever members of the crew were on the Galileo. Always they're like, "Spock, you're just fucking around, not doing anything," but he's actually working on the problem.
Yeah, and this is the same issue. He's like, "Spock, you're just cold-blooded," and Spock's like, "Thank you." And he says offhandedly, he's like, "I've just won my 4th game against the computer." And McCoy's like, "That's impossible."
Yeah, McCoy's like, "Even for you, that's impossible."
Yeah. So Spock shows him, and then McCoy is like, "Well, why are you just sitting here and telling me now that you've shown the computer's malfunctioning? Why are you just sitting here?" After he I just want to choke him sometimes.
So there is definitely something with the computer after all. Mechanically, it's working, but obviously there's something in the programming. I bet they installed that shitty Windows ME. I bet that's the problem. Or worse, upgraded Windows 95 to Windows ME.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Windows ME.
Yeah, what a piece of shit that was.
Vista was
bad too. Yeah. So Spock and McCoy head to the transporter room to beam down. Court is called back in session, and Stone begins by entertaining any emotions before reading the verdict. Lieutenant Girlfriend says the prosecution rests. Cogley stands up, looking super confused about everything. He kind of shrugs his arms and he's like, "Well, the defense rests too, I guess." And in classic courtroom drama fashion, in bursts Spock and McCoy with some last-minute evidence.
And they go whispering in Sam's ear.
But Lieutenant Girlfriend is like, "Hang on, buddy. You already said the magic words. The defense rests. This is done." There's a whole bunch of superfluous dialogue here. Cogley starts going on about human rights, the Bible, the Code of Hammurabi, Justinian, Magna Carta, the Constitution of the United States, fundamental declarations of the Martian colonies, the statutes of Alpha 3. And he says all of these documents speak of rights, the rights of the accused to a trial by his peers, the right of legal representation and cross-examination. And before we go on, I would just like to say that I really thought Gene had a pretty firm rule about religion on this show. Like, in fact, it was one of the reasons why they never really jumped into the religion topic directly under Gene. So it was really surprising for me to see the Bible included in this list, especially since the Bible doesn't really talk about trial by your peers and cross-examination or whatever. It's God's going to judge your ass, and that's that.
Right.
Yeah. And I know, like, people use that, particularly Moses that was mentioned earlier. We're dealing with Christian nationalism in the United States right now, and folks of that ilk are quick to use the Bible and Moses as a lawgiver, and that's why it's okay to have 10 Commandment monuments on the courthouse lawn, because it's just a representation of law and lawmaking, that you can somehow strip the religious schmutz that's all on top of it, but you can't. And so that's a thing that happens, you know, here and now in these United States. A lot of legal action about using government land and taxpayer funding to put up religious displays. Anyway, Cogley finishes, but most importantly, the right to be confronted by the witnesses against him. And Lieutenant Girlfriend is like, what the fuck are you on about, old man? Like, you had the chance to cross-examine all of these witnesses, and you said no every time. Not a human, though. This witness is a machine.
Yeah, that is his accuser, basically, the computer. And he's got new evidence that came to light that Spock and McCoy brought in, but he says, I can't tell you, I have to show you.
So Cogley demands that they reconvene aboard the Enterprise. Lieutenant Girlfriend objects to that, but Cogley persists, and he says, the machines don't have rights, but people must. And if you refuse Kirk this right, then you're no better than a machine.
Ooh.
And we know how he feels about those. The court-martial reconvenes aboard the Enterprise, where Spock gets a chance to explain what he learned from his chess problem. He programmed the computer himself to play chess, so the computer should have exactly the same knowledge and playing level as Spock, which should result in a draw every time, over and over and over again. And Spock challenges that someone, either accidentally or deliberately, adjusted the computer's programming. Cogley tries to get Spock to say that this adjustment could have altered the video playback that they watched earlier, but that's objected to and sustained. So instead, he questions how difficult such a thing would be to do to adjust that programming. Well, it turns out there are only 3 people on the ship who would have had the knowledge to pull that one off.
Of course.
Kirk, Spock, and records officer Lieutenant Commander Finney.
And so Sam goes back to the captain and he's like, how did you go about searching for Finney after he was lost, after the pod was jettisoned? And Kirk says, and I don't know what this is, but he's like, I instituted a phase 1 search, which is like a painstaking, thorough attempt to find him, which I don't know what that means. But I mean, I'm assuming they went around the ship or what, because the pod was jettisoned, so...
Right. So did we search a section of space and you divide it up like you would if you were going to do an archaeology dig, right?
Right.
You would divide it off into cubes. I don't know. But it assumes that a person is down and unable to respond. And Cogley suggests that you'd also first have to presuppose that that person wishes to be found. And Kirk's like, what?
And I can't believe that it didn't dawn on me, even at this point, that Finney could be alive.
Right.
But it just didn't. I'm like, oh, that's clever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, what if this person didn't want to be found? Could someone evade a search like that on a ship of this size? So Cogley submits to the court that Finney is not dead after all.
Dun, dun, dun. And I was like, what? I didn't even think about that. I really didn't.
I remembered parts of this episode, but not the payoff where Finney's still alive. I did not remember that bit at all. Cut back to the bridge. Kirk and Cogley suggest an experiment, but that experiment will require all personnel to leave the ship except for Kirk, the command crew, and the court crew. Cogley says he has an errand on the station, Starbase, that he is very vital to the purpose of this court, so he's going to leave too. Kirk explains that the Enterprise has audio sensing capability, so everyone off the ship, they should be able to listen and pick up some sounds.
This was silly to me. So this auditory sensor thing, so they've shut down the impulse engines and then they turn it on. It's super loud. Everybody's cringing because of their ears. And then he asks Spock to turn it down a little bit, but he reveals that the sound that they're hearing is caused by all of the heartbeats that are currently on the ship. And then he hands to McCoy what looks like a fucking karaoke microphone.
Yes, a basic silver karaoke microphone.
And then he says, so this is a white noise device that can mask out each person's heartbeat in the room so that it will be eliminated from the sounds. So then he gives it to Doc, and Doc kind of just makes his way around to everybody, basically holding this microphone to their chest.
And then he doing pretends to twist the,
Yeah, just awful. And with everyone eliminated, there's still one heartbeat. And Kirk asks Spock to try to get a fix on the heartbeat.
I have questions again. So they said everyone's heartbeats had been muted out except for the transporter room guy, and asks Spock to isolate and mute that track.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so why did McCoy not have to go down there with the little microphone and do it like that?
Because Spock could have fucking eliminated
He could have done all of them. You didn't need the microphone. If Spock can just... oh, sure, I can isolate that heartbeat, but I couldn't isolate any of the other ones.
Oh,
what?
Yeah. Good point. Oh my God, the science is not sound. The science is not sound.
Sure enough, a single heartbeat remains, and we get a lot of goofy reaction shots around the bridge now.
Ooh, who is it? Yeah.
So yeah, in or near engineering, and Kirk has that deck sealed off, and this was something, again, I had questions about. Is that something that's automated, that Spock can just flip a switch here and there? Or does that require crew to be down on the deck to do the isolating? Because in this episode, Spock does it from his station, but I know we've heard this before, and we get like the audio on the intercom of crew responding back, like B deck is secure or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Apparently,
lots of questions about how things work.
Spock can do it all, apparently.
Anyway, Kirk tells the Commodore that this is his problem, and he asks everyone to stay on the bridge, because Kirk going into this situation alone makes a lot of sense, sure.
Yeah, there's no witnesses. Once again, if something happens, the first thing I
would have been like, you come with me.
You come with me.
Yeah,
you're going to see this.
You're going to pull your phone out and record this whole thing, because, these people are after me. So we get a voiceover while Kirk heads to engineering. Cogley beamed down to find and bring back Finney's daughter, thinking it might be easier to deal with Finney if Jamie was there. So that's why he skipped out on this experiment.
Right.
Kirk's wandering around the empty engineering rooms now, calling out Finney's name with his phaser drawn.
No, because their impulse engines are off because they had to make everything quiet. They were in orbit around the starbase, but they're losing. Or no, are they in orbit around Earth? I think they're in orbit around Earth. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm confused. But they're in orbit of something. Yeah.
And the orbit is starting to decay. So Kirk kind of has to like get the lead out and hurry up before they.
That's not something that Spock can do. Flipping a couple switches on his console. No, we need an engineering team for that one.
Yep.
Finally, Finney speaks, and this is the goofiest shit. He's like, "Hello, Captain. Nothing to say, Captain." So stupid. And Kirk says, "Well, I'm happy to see that you're alive." But Finney's like, "Yeah, no, you mean you're relieved that your career is saved." And sure enough, Finney's definitely holding a grudge, and he feels like Kirk robbed him of his career.
Like, he's been holding it in, though.
For a while.
Like, he wrote letters over the years to his family, how wonderful and what their relationship is like. And then just for the purposes of this episode, he fucking snapped.
So he gets to do some evil monologuing. He's like, I'm a good officer, as good as you. I've watched you for years. The great Captain Kirk. And as Kirk passes by some set pieces, finally, out pops Finney with a phaser to Kirk's back. And he's talking like his cheese has slid clear off his cracker now. He's like, they told you to do this to me. You all conspired against me. 9/11 was an inside job. Donald Trump won that election. He's like bought every conspiracy theory in the book.
Ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, it seems so out of the blue. Like the Enterprise should have been his. And I'm like, what? This doesn't make any sense, but whatever.
Kirk pulls the phaser out of his hand and like alley-oops it over his head and into the engineering playset. You remember earlier when Kirk said that the most important thing ever is his ship?
Yeah.
Well, it's time for that to come bite us in the ass now, because Finney is like, I couldn't phaser you to death, Captain. You don't care about your own life enough. But your ship, you love this thing, so I fucked up the primary energy circuits. And Finney doesn't just blame Kirk, he blames the whole management team. And he starts walking backwards away from Kirk as he's talking about, like, you know, how he was a good officer. Cut to the bridge, and Spock's like, hey, the orbit is decaying pretty badly. We better get down to the transporter room. And for some reason, Stone says, like, we haven't reached our verdict yet. We'll hear this witness out. What the fuck are you on about? You can't reach a verdict on the death of a man who didn't die. And what good will any of it do if the ship loses orbit and burns up in the atmosphere or whatever?
Yeah, I feel like they're so rushed at the end to make to
tie the story up.
Episode that they leave so many holes.
Yep.
And it doesn't make any sense.
Finney's committed to killing them all. He figures they essentially killed him by ruining his career, so why shouldn't they all die? And Kirk's like, Jamie too? She's on board by now. And Finney's like, what?
Boy.
What have you done?
That really sets him off. So fight. Star Trek fight!
Kirk makes a run at him and tries to wrestle the phaser out of his hand. And Kirk lands a few punches and Finney fights back, flips and flops later. Kirk's shirt is torn again because, of course, it is.
The same place, always. Like right across his chest because, you know, we got to have some skin.
Uh-huh. And Finney picks up this massive adjustable wrench. Do they still use tools like this in the future? And more importantly, does the Federation use imperial or metric? See, Vulcanian. See, I would hope that they would be on the metric by this point, but you can't underestimate the stupidity and stubbornness of Americans. And I say that because, you know, Starfleet HQ is in San Francisco. While there's no America, the USA is long gone at this point in Star Trek future. Our stupid genes will have certainly been passed down. Kirk lands a couple final punches and Finney goes down. Cut to Kirk climbing through the Jeffries tube. Finney has told him exactly what had been sabotaged, so Kirk's off to fix it. And fixing it is pulling on some rubber hoses up in the Jeffries tube
and then having them spark a lot.
Yeah. And the ship like rocks a little bit with each move. Systems fixed, and on the bridge, Spock takes the command chair. And again, Uhura goes down to take the navigator station because she's a badass bitch.
Heck yeah.
And so she's able to get them back their altitude and back into a standard orbit.
Then finally, Commodore Stone finally does the only purpose he has in this show is to dismiss the case.
Yeah.
So he he rules at the court.
And Lieutenant Girlfriend is relieved by this too, because this means she can go back to being Kirk's fuck toy and not have to worry about him having feelings about her prosecuting him in court for a thing that he didn't do.
Gag. Yeah.
The button on the episode, everyone returns back to stations and Lieutenant Girlfriend is standing at the turbolift doors saying her goodbyes to Kirk. And she's like, well, how long is it going to be this time before I see you again? And as the string music swells, Kirk says, at the risk of sounding like a mystic, that depends on the stars.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Girlfriend has a gift for Kirk, though, from Sam Cogley. It's a book. We're never told what the book is or about.
It's old. Yeah, I don't know.
And where is Cogley anyway? Why, he's defending Ben Finney.
That's quick. That was quick.
Mm-hmm.
And he says he thinks he can win.
There's some fantastic lines. Lieutenant Girlfriend here says, do you think it would cause a complete breakdown of discipline if you just do me right here up against the turbo lift doors?
Oh my.
No, she says if a lowly lieutenant kissed a starship captain on the bridge of his ship, and Kirk's like, I'll try anything twice. So they kiss, and Kirk's like, see, no breakdown of discipline. She says goodbye, and Kirk wishes her better luck next time. But she says she thinks she did pretty good. I lost, didn't I? And blows him a kiss as the turbolift doors close. And then Kirk gets to do that awkward walk down to his chair, like knowing that the crew who had obviously all just watched all of that go down.
Yeah.
And we end with KSM around the captain's chair, and Kirk says, she's a very good lawyer. And Spock says, obviously. McCoy says, indeed she is. And off we go to our next adventure.
Boy, I'm sure glad that's over with.
I'm happy the affair is over.
Me too.
A most annoying, emotional episode.
Yeah, but you know, I learned something today.
When dreams become more important than reality, you give up travel, building, creating.
One jealous god, if all this makes a god.
By sparing your helpless enemy who surely would have destroyed you, you demonstrated the advanced trait of mercy.
Frankly, I was rather dismayed by your use of the term half-breed. You must admit, it is an unsophisticated expression.
All right, let's talk about the humanist themes in this episode. On first watch, I didn't really have a lot to talk about. After discussion, I do have some things that I stopped to make notes about. There is something about integrity and honesty that I liked the way it was shown in this episode, and that is, when Stone is trying to talk Kirk into just taking a desk job and, letting him handle it, and Kirk's like, no, I know I'm innocent, and I will see this through to the end. I have too much honesty and integrity.
Yeah.
To let you do this, to let this happen to me, to be slandered like this.
And you would think that the establishment of the Starfleet Command would have that same integrity, but they don't.
Yeah.
And it just shows you that certain institutions, no matter what they say, it really isn't. They really don't care about you.
No,
and it's more about them. No matter what they say, or you're important to us. It's all about protecting the establishment.
Yes. Let me give you two examples of this. How I felt like Starfleet trying to cover this whole thing up is your classic workplace HR. And I'm sorry if you're out there and you listen and you work in HR.
Yeah.
Because HR presents itself as a worker-friendly part of the organization, and we care about you, and we want to make sure that you have resources to do this and that and whatever. But at the end of the day, the human resources department works for the company, not you.
They are not going to go to bat for you.
They are going to defend the company whenever that option comes up.
Yep.
Exhibit A. When I moved,
I was going to say that's something that happened to you.
Yeah.
I was like, don't go to HR, Sarah. Don't go.
Well, I don't know if we've talked about this on the show or not, so I'll do the Reader's Digest version. But first, I worked for Disney's government and did what I thought. My boss and I had worked together years ago at Disney, so we were like acquaintance friends, and we'd known each other a long, long time. And I thought I was doing the right thing by like being a mensch and telling him like, hey, just a heads up, no firm plans yet, but we're going to move to Colorado. Like that's in the cards. I don't know when. I don't have a job out there. We don't have a place to live, but just so you're aware, this is something we're thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it did that as a friend. And that was the first mistake, right? That was my mistake that set off this whole chain of events, was trusting him.
Thinking that your friendship was more
than our business.
Had more weight.
Yes, correct.
For him as it did for you.
Yeah.
Than the business relationship.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so he went to HR and said, look, same thing. Like Sarah said they're going to be moving, and we don't really have a timeline, but would it be possible to go ahead and post the position so that we can get some resumes in and have a pool of people to choose from when she does leave? And HR said, no, we can only post the position once we have an end date for Sarah. So they said, you need to go back to Sarah and get her to put in writing my resignation. And I said, I can't do that because I don't know. I don't have a job. I don't have a place to live. I have nothing lined up yet. Like, this is all just a discussion at this point. Back to HR, and the HR decided that because the conversations that I had with my boss and his boss about this, they took that as my verbal notice and decided for me when my last day would be.
Those fuckers, yeah.
Yeah, so don't trust no one.
No, always know, no matter who you work for, that you need to protect yourself first and foremost.
Yeah,
because
what you do not need HR. What you need is a union.
Yeah, and unless you're in a certain type of job, you're not going to have a union. So
the other thing that this reflected to me, this idea of the cover up, the higher up trying to, make it all go away, reminded me of like religious organizations like the Catholics and the JWs who, there's sexual abuse happening in leadership positions. And literally that's how they handle it. We're going to make this go away for you. And here's how you're going to do for us.
You're going to take the fall so that,
or we're going to move you to a diocese in Brazil where nobody knows you. And then you won't have any problems. Don't worry.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. We'll move you to a desk job where no, come on, man.
Nobody gets punished. Not really.
Yes.
And the organization lives on with its dysfunction and never takes responsibility for any wrongdoing that's happened.
And of course, in this case, like Kirk wasn't in the wrong, but
Kirk wasn't in the wrong, but
it still has
Starfleet didn't want to mar their reputation by having a trial.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Another thing that jumped out as we were talking was like the idea of, as the accused in a trial, should your general character get weight? Should that be weighted in the argument? Right. So like the question of, and I know they can do like character witnesses and stuff. Like I
think they do get some weight.
Right. So when Spock says, yes, that's possible, but not for Kirk. Kirk's not that kind of a person. Those character statements were dismissed in this case as like, doesn't matter what your opinion of his, how he would handle this is. That doesn't matter. What matters is the computer shows X. So I thought it was same thing with the playing of their record, their service record, and all their commendations and awards.
What difference does that make? If they just said that it doesn't matter, then what's the point of, Yeah. So I think you have a great point about the whole integrity and honesty thing, but it also makes me think about like, when you said our current trial system, a lot of times if you're about to go to trial and you're facing a pretty bad rap and all the evidence is stacked against you, sometimes and maybe this is television that's giving you this impression, but sometimes a lawyer will say, just plead guilty. Just plead guilty and you'll get a lesser sentence.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to,
and that happens often.
Yeah, and as opposed to fighting for your rights and standing up and saying, I did not do this. Because if you're somehow penalized. So if I plead not guilty and I lose, I will get penalized for basically standing up and saying I didn't do this.
Right.
As opposed to if I just plead guilty. It's the principle.
Yeah.
It's the principle of the fucking thing. Why am I going to plead guilty when I didn't do it just so that I can get a lesser sentence? And I think we forgot the whole point of going to court is to prove innocence or guilt and then let that be done with it. But a lot of times you're actually guilty until proven innocent.
definitely true in this country for sure.
Yeah.
Nobody died on this episode.
No one died. At the beginning, I thought, I'm going to write something for Finney.
And then turns out, nope.
Nope. I really didn't expect for him to actually be alive. So that was a twist and a surprise for me because I did not remember this episode.
Mm-mm. Well, then we want to thank our patrons over at patreon.com/humanisttrek.
Let's get right to business.
Fine, I'm authorized to pay an equitable price. Federation has invested a great deal of money in our training. They're about due for a small return.
Listen, we pay our percentages. We're entitled to a little service for our money, huh?
Is this the way your citizens do business? Their right of petition?
They pay their percentages and the boss takes care of them.
Is there anything else?
Thank you, patrons.
Thank you, patrons.
We appreciate you so much. We are planning on doing some tabling at conventions and stuff, and we're looking forward to meeting with people, and that's only possible for us to do because of the generosity of our patrons. So thank you so much to those of you who do contribute. If you're not a patron, please consider becoming one. You get early access to every episode, and there's some fun merch that you can get access to. And also, we just recently did a bonus episode of Humanist Trek that is a South Park episode, and that is available only to patrons. So you're not going to get that in the main feed. You got to become a patron at patreon.com/humanisttrek for as little as $3 a month. And all of that really does go a long way to supporting the production of this show. Of course, we know not everyone has the money to give, and you can support the show in other ways. You can leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to Humanist Trek, share out our episodes on social media and with your friends. All of that stuff really does help reach more listeners, which is our top goal for at least the first quarter of 2023. So anything you can do that will help us reach more people would be very much appreciated.
I assume you're loitering around here to learn what efficiency rating I plan to give your cadets.
Trainees, to the briefing room. Is that all you gotta say? What about my performance?
Aren't you dead?
I don't believe this was a fair test of my command abilities. There was no way to win.
There's no correct resolution. It's a test of character.
Now, what is that supposed to mean?
I am understandably curious.
May I ask you a question?
Who's been holding up the damn elevator?
All right, well, it's time now to bring Becca back in for the exciting answer to last week's Starfleet Academy Cadet Challenge. Last time on Humanist Trek, you asked us...
In the episode Court Martial, Spock and McCoy enter a courtroom through a door. What is so interesting about this particular door?
Man, I knew the question and I didn't even fucking think to look for the door.
I don't know.
Fuck.
It was,
I was going to say something while you were watching it, too.
The court. You should have. They entered the courtroom.
Was it a regular door, not one of those sliding?
See, that's what I said. But I don't remember. I feel like I would have remembered that if I saw it in the episode.
I don't remember.
Something about
I do not remember. Oh, I hate it when I don't pay attention to something.
I know.
Like that.
Trying
to.
God damn it. All right, I'm taking a 0 on this quiz.
Yeah.
You had a guess. Do you want to go with your guess?
Yeah, I'm going with my guess. It was a regular old door, not a sliding door.
Yeah. Allie, is that your guess too?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what I said. Like, I don't even remember if I said anything. Sorry.
I think you both kind of were going in that direction.
I think so.
And you are correct.
What?
It is.
Yay!
It is one of the very few hinged doors shown throughout the series.
No shit.
Yay! I needed a point. I haven't scored a point in a while. So.
All right. Then next week we'll be reviewing The Return of the Archons. A world run by a computer named Landru traps the Enterprise crew. What is our question for The Return of the Archons?
I'm going to preface this with you both might hate me for this.
Oh, no.
But we'll see. Actor Ben Stiller's production company's name was derived from this episode. What is its name?
What? How the fuck would I know this?
It's something. It must be something in the episode, and I don't know.
Archonic.
Okay.
I don't know. All I know is the episode title.
Well, yeah, it's not the episode title. I'll give you that hint.
Shit. Okay. Well, I guess we'll have to watch.
This time, you need to write down on your notes ahead of time what the question is. So you're looking for...
Yeah. I'm literally looked that in my notes.
Get you
And no Googling Ben Stiller's production company.
I'm totally not. I won't.
All right. Well, we've locked in our non-answers. If you want to play along, no cheating, no Googling, set a course for your nearest social media app except Twitter and post your answer. Use the hashtag Starfleet Challenge, and we'll pick our favorite to be the winner. Next time on Humanist Trek, Season 1, Episode 22, The Return of the Archons. So join us back here next week for the next exciting episode.
Live long and prosper.
Kapla.
Humanist Trek is available wherever you replicate your podcasts. Follow us on all the social medias at Humanist Trek. Become a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Trek. Open hailing frequencies to podcast@humanisttrek.com and visit our website, humanisttrek.com. Humanist Trek is a production of Sarah Austin Media.